He owned a bakery. He coached Little League. He went to church with his wife and kids every Sunday. His neighbors called him one of the nicest guys in Anchorage. He had trophy animals mounted on the walls of his den. World record kills, Dall sheep, wolves, bear, the kind of hunter other hunters respected. And somewhere in the Alaskan wilderness, there were 17 women buried in shallow graves, women he had hunted the exact same way. Robert Hansen was born in Iowa in 1939. Small kid, bad acne, buck teeth, a stutter that got worse when he was nervous. He was bullied constantly throughout school and had almost no friends growing up. His father ran a bakery and worked him hard. Long hours, strict discipline, very little warmth. Hansen spent most of his childhood alone in the woods with a rifle, learning to track deer and move quietly through trees and read the ground for signs of where an animal had been. It was the one place he felt like he had any control at all, the one thing nobody could take from him. He carried that into adulthood, and eventually he turned it on people. He had a troubled early adulthood, arrests for petty theft, a conviction for burning down a school bus garage in Iowa, a short prison sentence, a first marriage that ended while he was locked up. By the time he walked out of prison in the early 1960s, he had very little holding him in Iowa. In 1967, he packed up and moved to Alaska. Anchorage was the right place for a man who wanted to disappear into something new. The city was booming, pipeline money, construction work pouring in, a population growing faster than anyone could track. Hansen opened a small bakery. He remarried. He had children. He built exactly the kind of life that makes a man invisible to everyone around him. Churchgoer, family man, business owner, trophy hunter. He had Dall sheep and wolves entered into the Pope and Young World Record books. 3 legitimate world records. The kind of outdoor reputation that made men in Alaska shake your hand and mean it. Nobody knew what he did when his wife and kids left town. Hansen would drive the streets of downtown Anchorage at night. He targeted exotic dancers, topless bartenders, sex workers, women working the strip clubs and bars that had multiplied with the pipeline money. He chose them deliberately. He had calculated that their disappearances would go unnoticed. Women who moved through Anchorage like the pipeline workers did, here for a season and gone the next, were not the kind of women whose absence triggered immediate investigations. He would pull up alongside them. He would offer money. When they got into his truck, he pulled out a gun. What happened next depended on which woman he had chosen that night. Some he drove out to a remote cabin he kept outside the city. He raped them there. Then he released them with a warning that was really a threat. If they told anyone, he would find them. He was betting on their silence. He was betting that women in their position would not go to police, would not be believed if they did, and would not risk the exposure. He was right most of the time. Reports were made occasionally. They went nowhere. Other women he drove to Merrill Field, a small public-use airport near downtown Anchorage, where he kept a single-engine Cessna. He loaded them into the plane. He flew north, over the Nick River, over the flats, deep into the Alaskan wilderness, where there were no roads, no structures, nothing for miles in every direction except trees and snow and silence, the kind of terrain that kills people who don't know how to move through it. And these women did not know how to move through it. He landed the plane on a frozen lake or a stretch of flat ground. He untied them. He told them to run. Then he hunted them with a Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle and a hunting knife. The same patience he used on animals, the same skill, the same calm. He knew the terrain and they did not. He knew how to track a person through fresh snow, the same way he tracked deer through a forest. Most of them didn't make it far. He buried them where they fell. He marked every location on an aviation map he kept hidden in the rafters of his attic. Small pencil marks, coordinates that only he could read. Then he flew home. He opened the bakery the next morning. This went on for 12 years, from 1971 to 1983. Women disappeared from Anchorage and nobody connected the pattern. A few bodies surfaced near the Nick River and were identified as homicides, but investigators had no suspect and no clear thread linking the cases. Hansen's name never appeared on any list. He was not a person of interest. He was the baker, the father, the churchgoer, and the trophy hunter. And the distance between that man and the one flying into the wilderness with a rifle and a woman in his plane simply did not register to anyone around him, until one woman got away. Her name was Cindy Paulson. She was 17 years old. In June of 1983, Hansen picked her up near a hotel in downtown Anchorage, drove her to his house, and handcuffed her to a post in his basement. He assaulted her through the night. The next morning, he told her he was taking her for a ride. He drove her to Merrill Field. He was walking her toward the Cessna when she ran, handcuffs still on her wrists, no shoes on the pavement. She ran toward the road and flagged down a truck driver who was passing the airport. She was taken directly to police. She told them everything: the house, the basement, the handcuffs on her wrists that were still there when she walked in, the plane at Merrill Field, the man's name. She had seen a piece of mail at the house: Robert Hansen, the baker on Old Seward Highway. Investigators went to his home within hours. They sat across from him at his own kitchen table. Hansen was calm and cooperative and looked them in the eye and said he had never seen the girl before in his life. 2 of his hunting buddies provided an alibi for him, said he had been with them the night in question. The investigators looked at the quiet family man with the trophy animals on the wall and the business and the church attendance, and they walked away. They did not arrest him. They did not search the house. They believed the word of a respected local businessman over the word of a 17-year-old girl who was sitting in front of them with marks still on her wrists. They let him go. What changed was the FBI. Alaska state troopers had reached out to Special Agent John Douglas, one of the founders of criminal profiling, one of the men who built the behavioral science unit at Quantico. Douglas reviewed everything: the disappearances, the bodies near the Knik River, the profile of the victims, the geography, and he looked at Robert Hansen. He told investigators that Hansen was their man and that they needed to go back with a search warrant and look properly. They did. Inside a hidden space in the attic rafters, they found a Remington rifle, a pistol, a shotgun, the Ruger Mini 14 that matched the ballistics from the recovered bodies, pieces of jewelry, a driver's license and ID cards belonging to women who had been missing for years, newspaper clippings about the murders, his own crimes, filed away like souvenirs, and the aviation map, covered in small pencil marks, 17 locations north of Anchorage. Investigators flew over each one. 12 of those marks were graves. Hansen confessed in October 1983. He sat with Alaska state troopers for hours and told them everything. He took them up in a plane and pointed. 12 bodies were eventually recovered from the wilderness. 5 locations produced nothing. The terrain and the years had taken what remained before anyone could find it. He was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 461 years in prison without the possibility of parole. One woman was found near Horseshoe Lake and could not be identified. She was buried in the Anchorage Municipal Cemetery as an unknown. Investigators called her Horseshoe Harriet. Hansen told troopers he had picked her up in the winter of 1983 from downtown Anchorage. He did not know her name. He had never asked. She lay unidentified for 37 years. In 2021, Alaska state troopers used genetic genealogy to finally find out who she was. Her name was Robin Pelkey. She was 19 years old when Hansen killed her. She was from Colorado. She had a name and a face and a life, and for 37 years none of that was attached to her. One woman has still never been identified. She was found near Eklutna Lake. Hansen said she was his first victim. He confessed to her murder and said he did not know who she was. Investigators have called her Eklutna Annie for over 40 years. She is still buried in Anchorage as an unknown. Nobody has ever found her name. Robert Hansen died in prison on August 21, 2014. He was 75 years old. Natural causes. He died at Alaska Regional Hospital, a few miles from the bakery, a few miles from Merrill Field, a few miles from the streets where he had driven at night for 12 years, looking for women who would get into his truck. He had served 30 years of a 461-year sentence. Cindy Paulson was 17 years old when she ran across a parking lot in handcuffs toward a stranger's truck. She was the reason any of this unraveled. The alibi Hansen's friends gave him did not survive serious scrutiny once investigators went back and looked. The search warrant that found the map and the rifles and the jewelry, none of it happens without her. She told the truth the night she walked into that police station, and nobody believed her. And she told it again, and the second time it brought down 12 years of killings that a community had no idea were happening in the wilderness above their city. He was the baker, the churchgoer, the neighbor everyone trusted, the man with the trophy room and the world records and the family in the pew beside him every Sunday. And when his wife and kids left town, he became something that the people who knew him would spend the rest of their lives trying to understand. 17 women, 12 bodies recovered, one identified after 37 years, one still unknown after more than 4 decades, and one 17-year-old girl who ran and made sure the world finally knew what he was.